Heading into the home stretch of the college basketball season, 2 weeks left of the Pac-12 season for Utah. 2 weeks left really in the Mountain West season for Utah State, and really a week left for BYU in the West Coast Conference. Good weekend for Utah, BYU. Utah State didn't have a weekend game, but the world of bracketology is ever-changing, changing by the day, changing by the hour, and as net rankings tell us, can change even if you don't play. Our next guest, who I've been talking to for years on this show, has been doing this bracketology stuff and projections on the tournament before it was even called bracketology. He's Jerry Palm of CBS Sports, kind enough to take a few minutes out of his day. Join us here in Salt Lake City. Hey, Jerry.
Hey, Bill. How's it going?
I'm doing well, it's a fun weekend around here. What's that?
All right, can I interject one thing real quick?
Yes.
West only has 1 week left this year. They moved their tournament back a week.
Yeah. That's true.
So they've only got 1 week left.
So, yeah, there's not much time left to make a move or to do whatever you've got to do right now. Pac-12's got a couple of more weeks left. Let's start first with BYU because they had the most notable win in the state, biggest win in their conference of the year, and it's been a really – I think people expected BYU to be good this year. I'm not sure even people in this state or maybe even people around that program knew how good they could be, but 3 key seniors, a new coaching staff, kind of a new energy in the program, and it's been a good year. What's your impression of the Cougars?
Yeah, it has been a good year, and actually it could have been better because, Childs missed a bunch of time, right?
Yeah, missed those first 9 games because of that kind of garbage NCAA ruling.
Right. So, it could have been maybe even a little bit better. Yeah, but they're having a terrific season. They've got, veteran guys. I can't believe Hawes is still there. It's got to be like his 9th year. It seems like every school's got a guy like that.
Yeah.
Seniors would have been long gone by now. But, yeah, the win over Gonzaga is huge. It erases any doubt, if there was any, about their tournament position. It's a seed booster. It's a confidence booster. This is a team that's played very well down the stretch of this season. And really, other than that loss at San Francisco that they gave away, has had a pretty respectable season and could win a couple of games in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing. They've in recent years, they've had some nice wins. They've beaten the St. Mary's and some good non-conference and occasionally knocked off Gonzaga, but they always had 1 or 2, sometimes 3 head-scratching losses. They might lose to Pacific or San Diego or San Francisco, as you mentioned. Outside that San Francisco game, they don't have many head-scratchers, and sometimes when you're building a resume, everybody talks about quality wins, but bad losses are bad too, and so they don't have that many of those, and they've got some quality wins now too.
Yeah, really, and San Francisco doesn't qualify as what you call a bad loss. It's a quadrant 2 game. It's bad in the sense that there was a 21-point lead and they blew it. That's the part that hurts about that game. It's not really a bad team. So, yeah, all their losses are quadrant 1 and 2. They won at Houston. That's the team leading the American Conference, Utah State, St. Mary's, all really good teams that BYU has beaten this year, and most of that's away from home. And that's why they're a top 25 team right now and a top 25 team in the bracket as well.
Well, and they've got a win over UCLA, which is looking better and better now as the Bruins begin to surge.
Yeah, that's a weird team. Providence in the Big East kind of the same. Totally messed up the first 2 months of the season, and now trying to get hot and see if they can salvage themselves in that large bid. And I had not thought one time about UCLA until last week when a reporter covering them called to ask me about them. And I thought, I might have to look something up here because I really hadn't thought about them. But they've gotten hot at a good time. But they weren't even in the top 100 of the net until 2 wins ago.
No, they've cracked that. They knocked off Utah and Colorado, which not very many teams sweep the mountain swing here in the Pac-12, and they did last week. Back to BYU for a minute. Obviously, short schedule left. They'll be probably in the semifinal round of the West Coast Conference. What's their seed ceiling, do you think, Jerry?
Probably a 5.
Okay.
I mean, I've got them as a 6 right now. Even if they were to beat Gonzaga again, it's 1 game. It probably does more damage to Gonzaga than it does, it's not going to push BYU from a 6 to a 3 or anything like that.
Right.
That's definitely an upward move, but that's probably the only upward move. What they can do on their own, attrition around them could move them up, but in terms of what they can actually do on their own, beating Gonzaga would probably move them up a line.
Utah State's the other program, and they didn't start well this year. The injury to the big fella, Namias, and others, they were off to a rough start, but they found their footing in conference play. I see you have them as a 9 seed right now. This is a veteran team with some NBA prospects led by Sam Merrill. Now San Diego State's kind of shown they're maybe a little bit vulnerable with the loss over the weekend. I see you have them as a 9 right now. What's your read as we sit here late in February on Utah State?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, they had a roster issue as well early on. And it's a good team. I think that they're, finally coming around to playing sort of the way that people expected. I mean, that was a preseason top 15 team, as I recall, and it hasn't quite been that good of a year. But they did beat LSU and Florida outside the league. Florida is a team that they'd be competing with on the bubble, and they still have to be considered on the bubble, even as a 9 seed, just because of the damage they can do to themselves here over the rest of their schedule. And also LSU is starting to play down the bracket some. I think I've got them as an 8. So, in fact, I tried to bracket them together and it wouldn't let me because they'd already played each other. So, yeah, Utah State, though, doing well. And I would be surprised if they miss the NCAA tournament entirely, even though I have them on the bubble. But they're probably a middle-of-the-bracket team at best, unless they beat San Diego State, in which case they maybe could move into top 25 territory.
Sure would be an interesting matchup. You've got a matched right now in Spokane with Arizona State, and there's a team that's kind of come out of nowhere. They were 3-4 at the beginning of conference play in the Pac-12, and they've rolled off 7 in a row. Got pretty good guard play. Hurley's had the team there the last couple of years. That could be an interesting matchup if that were to play out.
Yeah, and Arizona State, yeah, you're right. Another team that's come on strong late. What have they got? 7 wins in a row?
Yep.
9 out of 10. Really, the loss is at Washington State, which is a bit of a head-scratcher. But, yeah, they've done a really nice job. Beat Arizona and Oregon. They've got to go to the L.A. school still and, play that very hot UCLA team we just talked about. And what should be a desperate USC team that's playing its way down the bracket at this point.
Yeah, do you still have SC in right now? Because I called the game yesterday. Utah knocked them off by 14 at the Huntsman Center. You still have them in?
Yeah, I do, but their resume is looking worse. And part of that is because LSU is starting to play down. And that's their win. That's their signature win, if you will, is LSU. And they're not looking so good right now. And, of course, they've won some games in the league, but outside the league, they're only 2-7 in Quadrant 1. And that's LSU and at Oregon State, and that home loss to Temple is sitting there as well as a bad loss. So, yeah, I mean, USC's got to pick things up here a little bit. And, of course, nothing but home games left, both Arizona schools and UCLA. So that's his home games, the teams that can help.
Utah's not going to be in it this year. Next year's probably their chance. They had the 3rd youngest team in all of college basketball coming in. They're up and down. Got a nice win yesterday. They can play spoiler, though, down the stretch. They've already beaten Stanford once. Stanford's not necessarily playing great. I think you've got them as an 11 seed. They see Stanford on Thursday, and they still have Colorado at home. And, they're not going to knock Colorado out, but they could maybe hurt their seeding chances.
Yeah, they could. And Stanford, you're right. I mean, Stanford was going through quite a slump there for a while after getting off to a great start in conference play. But, Wills got hurt, and then De Silva was hurt a little bit, and it kind of threw him off. And, of course, they didn't play very well when Wills was out longer. De Silva only missed a couple of games, I think. But, now they're back. They're healthy. They're playing a little better. They've won a couple in a row. Won those games up in Washington, which, even though those teams are not doing well this year, they're still road games and tough road teams. So, big win for Stanford as they try and regain some momentum, and an important finish to the schedule because, as you point out, they're going to see Utah and Colorado, and then I believe they get Cal again at the end of the year.
I think they played
the Oregon schools.
Yeah, because they've played the fewest games right now. Stanford has. Of anybody in the league, they're a few games behind. Jerry Palm's our guest on the Bill Riley Show, talking some bracketology and looking around. For the last couple of years, the Pac-12 has been a bit of a national joke. They haven't had a great team per se, although Oregon was the Final Four team a few years ago. I don't think they've got a great team this year, Jerry, but I think the league overall, top to bottom, and I think from a seeding standpoint and teams in, I think is much better. Would you agree?
Yeah, it's definitely deeper this year. I don't think there's any question about it. Oregon and Colorado are going to battle to be maybe top 16 seeds. I guess Arizona could make a push for that as well. But even if they don't, they're at least a borderline top 25 team. And then after that, we'll see what happens. You've got USC, you've got Arizona State playing better. You've got Stanford right on the cut line pretty much. So, those teams, and then we'll see if UCLA can stay hot. But if UCLA does play their way in, it's almost certainly going to come at the expense of one of those other teams because it seems unlikely they can do it without hurting one of those other teams.
The most bids from a league this year is going to come from which league?
Oh, the Big Ten, no question. I mean, even if things tail off here at the end and they only end up with 8, they'll still be the most.
And then the second most?
Big East.
Big East.
Probably 6 or so in the Big East, 5 in the ACC, maybe 5 in the SEC, maybe. Pac-12 is looking at 5 or 6, I would think. Who did I leave out? The majors. It's,
the SEC.
The only other multiple big leagues figure to be the Mountain West, the West Coast, and maybe the A-10, although the teams behind Dayton are busy trying to play their way out.
Speaking of the kind of the top and the carnage from last weekend, how much did most of the top 5 losing last weekend, top 6 maybe even, impact seeding? Well,
I didn't change anything other than to swap Kansas and Baylor at the top of the bracket as the top 2 seeds, overall seeds. I still have Gonzaga 3 and San Diego State 4, but San Diego State's more vulnerable now with a home loss to UNLV. It's a bad loss, quadrant 3 loss. So they need to, not take any more of those and not open the door for somebody else like Dayton to move up, or possibly Maryland or maybe an ACC team to possibly take their spot. They're definitely the most vulnerable after that loss.
I think I heard Brian Dutcher made mention that he'd rather be the number 2 seed in the West than a number 1 seed back east.
Yeah, I don't blame him, actually. I mean, you got to beat them all eventually anyway.
Yeah.
And if you're the number 1 in the East, you're probably going to have to play Duke in Madison Square Garden, which is their second home floor. So, yeah, I'd rather be almost anywhere else if I were them.
How good's this Dayton team in your mind?
Fantastic. I don't know if you've had a chance to see him out there, but Obi Toppin is, might be a lottery pick in the NBA. Jared Crutcher, their number 2 player and scorer, is just a hair behind him in terms of ability, and they call him Jared Clutcher because he's hit some big shots at the end of games. They play very well on both ends of the floor, highly efficient, both offensively and defensively, and they're going to be very tough to eliminate in this tournament, and are capable of winning the whole thing.
Is conference tournament time going to be what it usually is this year, or do you think most of the majors will have their bids locked up?
Oh gosh, no. There are definitely going to be teams in all of the conferences that are looking at multiple bids, where the conference tournaments are going to be important. I think, for my money, the Big Ten tournament this year is must-see TV with all of, 12 teams in the top 60 of the net. Literally anybody could win. It's hard to tell because the road teams have had so much trouble in the Big Ten. It's like, all right, well, let's get everybody off their home courts and see what they can do. And who knows what will happen when nobody's got a home court advantage. And it's going to be an important tournament for some teams like Rutgers in particular, who's looking for wins away from home.
Well, Rutgers should just be happy. They're relevant again. They're good again, and they're back.
Yeah, but they're not. Yeah. Well, they're only really back if they make the NCAA tournament, which would be the first time since 1991. I've been doing brackets this is my 27th season, and I have never written Rutgers' name in a bracket before this year.
Well, it would be a huge get then. Their net is really good right now, and I think you have them as one of the last 4 in, right?
Yeah, and that's because they can't win away from home because, since 1994, nobody's received an at-large bid with at least 3 wins away from home. That's road or neutral, and Rutgers only has 1 with 2 road games left to play, Penn State and Purdue, so good luck there, and the conference tournament.
Find his stuff at cbssports.com. He's been doing it, as he said, for 27 years. He's great at it, too, and it updates now. You almost, I think you're updating it daily, and I think when you get into conference tournament time, you almost update it a couple of times a day, don't you?
Yeah, it's not daily yet. It'll be Monday today and then Friday this week.
Gotcha.
And then once the conference tournaments start next week, it'll be every day as needed and maybe near the end. More than once a day, depending on what's going on.
There you go. Jerry Palm with us here on the Bill Riley Show. Thanks, Jerry, as always. Good talking to you.
All right, thanks.
Take care.